All right, we take a look at Good to Great by Jim Collins. And Jim Collins is a Stanford professor, and he had a team to research good to great companies. He compared some average, just good companies with great companies, and they discovered some common traits among the good to great companies. And that's what's summarized in this book. So I summarized the 6 concepts. The first one is level 5 leadership. In the great companies, they found that most of the leaders were very humble, yet determined. They weren't the flashy celebrity type superstar leaders, as someone might imagine. A little bit counterintuitive. The second one, first who, then what. The great companies always started with the right people. Instead of figuring out where they're gonna go, they figured out who do we need to hire. So they start with who needs to be on the bus, who needs to get off the bus, and to make sure that the right person gets the right seat on the bus. So instead of starting with what, they started with who. Next concept, confront the brutal facts. There's a story about Jim Stockdale, who was a prisoner of war, was tortured for 8 years, and how he endured mental abuse. And he combined optimism with realism. The optimism that he will prevail in the end, but the realism that he's not gonna get out anytime soon. And this gave him incredible resolve and strength. Whereas naive optimists might be thinking, hey, we're gonna get out by Christmas, everything will be fine. No, we will not be out by Christmas, but we will eventually prevail and everything will be okay. So that's the type of attitude that the great companies had. Next, the Hedgehog Concept. Fox knows a lot of things, right? It's a jack of all trades. The hedgehog only knows one thing, but it's a specialist. So the idea of Hedgehog Concept is figuring out the specialty, specifically what the company is passionate about, what generates profit, and what they can possibly be the best at, and sticking to that. Next, culture of discipline. A lot of the mediocre companies, they were kind of a tyrant, right? They try to enforce discipline. But the great companies, they created a culture of discipline. And again, it starts with having the right people, where if you have a culture of discipline, you don't have to enforce or micromanage as much. Last concept, technology accelerators. The average companies, they look for the latest fad. Okay, technology is changing, we can't be left behind. So they try this, they try that, without real implication of how that really affects the company's core. Whereas great organizations, they took a little bit of a slower approach of crawl, walk, then run. And they use the technology as an enhancer, an accelerator, so to speak, rather than the cause of growth. So I think there's a different way to look at technology, right, and its role. And the great companies were selective about the technologies that they implemented. So those 6 ideas sum up the book. I really like the fact that the book was very research-based. It seems like they didn't start with a thesis and trying to prove it. They just said, hey, let's look at great companies and see what they have in common. And this team of researchers, they just interviewed a ton of executives and different people and found some commonalities among great companies. And it doesn't just relate to publicly traded companies, but also any organization. I think these concepts can be applied. So I learned a lot, very useful information. I'll say check it out.